Welcome to Electric Perspectives, a podcast that explores the innovations and policies shaping the electric power industry and how America's electric companies are delivering the resilient clean energy we need to strengthen America's energy security and power our daily lives. This show is brought to you by EEI, the Edison Electric Institute, which represents all U.S. investor-owned electric companies. I'm your host, Brian Reel. Electric companies are working to meet the highest level of electricity demand growth since the post-World War II era, spurred in part by AI and data centers. Today, we're joined by Ed Baine, Executive Vice President of Utility Operations and President of Dominion Energy Virginia, and Martin Hermann, CEO of BrightNight, to discuss how electric companies and technology providers are meeting the increased demand for electricity. We'll also discuss lessons learned from Northern Virginia, which is also known as Data Center Alley, that can guide other regions as they prepare for a future shaped by AI and data centers. Ed and Martin, thank you for taking the time to chat.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me.
Good afternoon, Brian. Glad to be here.
So, Ed, we'll start with you. How is Dominion Energy Virginia meeting increasing electricity demand and preparing for future growth as you work to serve more than 2.7 million customers?
So, Brian, as you mentioned, we are experiencing the largest growth in power demand since the years following World War II. If you look at our 2024 Integrated Resource Plan, it talks about demand growth doubling by 2039. That's almost 30 gigawatts of growth in 15 years, where it took us 100 years to develop. The DOM zone, which is the area that we serve by transmission, is seeing the largest growth in PJM, growing at over 6%. Another data point is we've had all 10 of our system peaks this year. And so when people ask, is the demand growth real? It definitely is. And so what's driving it? Data centers are definitely a significant driver of the growth. But we are also seeing continued growth from manufacturing, electrification, and overall customer growth. And as that demand for energy continues to grow across the Commonwealth, we're deploying an all-of-the-above approach. So we're building offshore wind, we're building solar and energy storage, we're working on new natural gas, and we're also working on small modular reactors. In addition, we're making historic investments in our electric transmission grid and significant investments in modernizing our distribution grid.
And Martin, can you give us a quick overview of your company, BrightNight, and the way in which it works with electric companies, supporting the growth of AI data centers and the other sources of growth that Ed was explaining?
Happy to, yes. So I started BrightNight almost 7 years ago. Thesis back then around starting a new IPP company was power when you need it. And so we basically focused on parts of the power grid in the US where we feel like we can help integrate new load. Think of it mostly vertically integrated power markets. And so one of the things that we feel like we've been at the forefront is hybridization of assets. So if you assume that the power grid is fixed, and then questions, how can you increase the utilization of the power grid? How can you increase capacity factor, et cetera? You'll end up at hybridizing something. And so that's the theme we have been pioneering and working on. And this is not just solar with a battery, but it's general renewables. Can be solar with wind, can be solar with hydro, which is a very interesting part. And since the election, we also added gas to some of our renewable sites. And so overall, the theme is basically, how can we help new load coming into a congested grid to be integrated and served?
And looking at Northern Virginia, which has the largest concentration of data centers in the world, Ed, what led the region to become such a major hub? And maybe how long have you been with Dominion Energy Virginia, and what have you seen?
I'll answer the second question first. I've been with the company over 30 years. And so I've seen the growth of the data centers within Northern Virginia. And as many people know, the Northern Virginia area is definitely one of the origins for the internet. What continues to drive it as a major hub is a number of factors, including 60% or so of the world's internet traffic goes through Northern Virginia. Its proximity to the major government needs, significant fiber that has continued to grow within that area, access to power and water are also very big items for data centers. Also, the growth of the talented workforce that is needed to support data centers as well.
Data centers, of course, can be energy intensive. How is Dominion Energy thinking about innovations on both sides of the meter to try to drive greater efficiency? And I know there's efficiency with the chips and the technology itself, but from serving those sites.
Yes. We're looking to be as efficient as possible in everything that we do. And so from a generation perspective, We are modernizing our fleet to more efficient units while making sure the existing units are as efficient as possible as well. And from a transmission perspective, we're utilizing advanced conductors to move more power through the same corridors. And we've also introduced new solutions for our region, like 765 kV, a higher voltage transmission than what we currently use in our service territory today. And then we're also proposing new HVDC solutions or high voltage direct current lines that can transport power more efficiently over long distances. And then as you think about behind the meter, we're ramping our efforts on demand side management programs, working with not just data center customers, but all of our C&I customers. And we'll be making our first filing for virtual power plant solutions before the end of this year. And then the last thing I would say on that is we're also currently working with entities like EPRI and our larger customers to develop new programs to support more flexible or curtailable loads to help optimize the operations on the system.
And Martin, you've written a little bit about the importance of speed to market and how critical it is for energy projects, especially serving some of these new large-scale customers. What strategies or technologies allow BrightNight to help accelerate the deployment of these projects and really kind of be a connecting piece?
Okay, speed to market is a key factor. If you look at the macro level, like you said, we have growth in our electrical grids, AI being a major driver. The way we look at it is if you want to win the AI race, you need to win the power race. This is very interesting for me personally because the first 17 years in my life, I spent in the semiconductor industry in tech, and then the last 17 years in electricity, building power plants. I've never assumed that both of them would somehow intersect. And so it's quite interesting to see the different culture that are now cooperating. So we have worked on a number of topics to increase the speed to market. First, we started a company. I built an integrated development platform that combines different data-driven sources, sites for site selection, modular design principles, etc. This is a software that is now in its 6th year, and it's fairly unique. It also allows us advanced grid modeling using digital twin technology, predictive analytics, etc. And so what this allows us to do is basically work with load serving entity, with the utility to support integrating new load by maximizing the value to the customer. Or like I said earlier, if you have a part of the grid that is congested and otherwise you wouldn't be able to integrate load, we were able to integrate new load into the power grid. But we found technology to be incredibly helpful, especially as software keeps making progress, and we're trying to harvest that progress in designing the smarter power plants and helping the grid.
And you and Ed both described a wide variety of generation technologies that are being utilized. As you look ahead, what are your thoughts on things like long duration energy storage or hydrogen generation or even small modular reactors? And what role might they have in supporting data center demand?
Yeah, definitely. It's exciting to see as these technology all mature and we look at each of these technologies. Key is, of course, because we're building infrastructure, we need to make sure that by the time we're building them into the power plants, that these technologies are mature enough. But we believe that, for instance, long duration storage is making it into the commercial operation now. I think the small modular reactor, I think we're all impatiently looking at technology and trying to understand what's the time of intersection. What's really exciting about it is if you combine the different technologies, if we hybridize them, the question is what product can you deliver to the customers? I mentioned earlier, in one case, we have a wind, solar, battery hybrid, and it allows us to increase the capacity factor in that part of the grid, materially basically double it. You get a very interesting shape that you can deliver to the customer. We have hybridized DAN, the river DAN, with solar and battery. And again, you can deliver interesting value to the customer. Most recently, we started to hybridize solar with gas. And again, within the context of a vertically integrated grid, it allows you to deliver a very interesting product to the customer. All of this gets more complex the more you hybridize, which is why software plays an important role to make sure that you understand what to deliver. Helps the utilities to better understand what we as an industry can deliver. And that has been one of the key forces that we have been driving over the past years and will certainly increase moving forward.
On the point of value to customers, Ed, how is Dominion Energy keeping costs down for customers while making these necessary investments to expand and enhance and strengthen infrastructure? And how are you discussing these issues with customers?
Yeah, it's a great question. And affordability is always front of mind in everything that we do. I would just say a couple of points, Brian. One, being a vertically integrated utility helps with affordability for our customers because as you think about the cost for power, by us owning generation units, it's a natural hedge for our customers, helping to manage increases in that space. Secondly, from a benchmarking perspective, our utility is usually in the top 2 or 3 in how we manage our operations and maintenance spend per customer when compared to other companies in our industry. Those things are also very important because every dollar matters. And if we can deploy those as efficiently as possible, it helps to manage bills for our customers as well. And then making sure that we're prioritizing investments across the different business areas so that we're spending the next dollar on the right thing for our customers each and every day. And so our team's very focused on making sure those things happen. And then when our customers do have challenges paying their bills, to provide the resources and the education needed to help with that perspective as well.
And looking back at the growing demand for electricity, there's a new forecast that comes out every couple of weeks, it seems. Martin, do you see this demand surge plateauing anytime soon, or are you with the folks who think that we're going to see a steady increase over time?
Yeah, that's a $1 trillion question. As I said earlier, I've been 17 years in tech, been in a team developing microprocessors back then for what we know now are mobile devices or smartphones. We always had similar question, kind of what's going to be the power envelope of these devices, what's going to be the deployment, what's going to be the addressable market. And looking back on the predictions we use, it's just very hard. And I think it's even harder to answer the question of how steep of a demand growth will AI over 5 or 10 years provide. It's clearly the early days. On the other side, I think no one would dispute we're an area of the cognitive super cycle. We're seeing digital intelligence emerging and over time, I think we'll see that morphing into a lot of use cases. I think we'll see the next 5 years robotics combined with machine learning, with deep learning, with all kinds of implementations of digital intelligence combined drive even more need for electricity. I saw a statistic somewhere that is predicting that the data to be stored is basically exploding from here on over the next 10 years. Why? Because if you take robots out in the real world, they're recording pretty much everything what's around them. So if we think like we're hosting a lot of data already, it might not be that much compared to the next 5 or 10 years. And so that rapid development, driving AI into edge computing and basically making everything intelligent, every capability intelligent is certainly something that will continue to drive demand. One last thing I heard Elon Musk recently quoting that if you want to double the intelligence of the current big models, you need to increase the compute by 8 or 10 times. So there's also a saturation that requires more and more compute if you want to continue to increase the intelligence of the system. There's just a highly dynamic landscape, almost impossible to make your prediction, but it's probably fair to say that conceptually we can expect continued demand surge based on this new exciting capability.
And Ed, do you think it's more important to have a great prediction or that you and your teams are just constantly reevaluating as new information becomes available?
I actually think it's both. You need to improve the predictions, but also be as flexible as possible in how you address them. And I would agree. I think Martin covered it well on just what people would expect. The amount of technology, sensing devices, you name it, that's being deployed, just not in the utility industry, but just across so many different sectors. There's so much data that will be consumed and used for a variety of business cases for companies and customers. As you think about the AI load itself, I do think at some point there'll be a differentiation in the training AI load versus the inference AI load. There's some point in the future, maybe the training levels off, but utilizing that data in applications, utilizing that data to make business decisions, I think that's going to last for the foreseeable future. So there's going to be quite a bit of demand.
And Ed, you and your team have really enabled a lot of that data center expansion in Northern Virginia. Are there lessons that other regions might be able to learn just from the experience you and your team have had?
Absolutely. I mean, we think about what's been happening with data centers over the past decade, but we've been really working with data centers really over the past quarter century, 25 years plus. And from a state regulator perspective, there's always conversations about paying your fair share. And to date, it's shown that data centers in Virginia have been paying their fair share. But we need to make sure that our state regulators are armed with the right information to make decisions on what type of investments are prudent and also how you recover those investments. We're also, in our most recent filing in front of the commission, just providing some additional tools like a high load customer proposal so that you can make sure that costs continue to be allocated fairly into the future. And everybody should want that. And then just from a community perspective, data centers are a significant driver of economic development and support to local communities. You can see it in places like Loudoun County, but you also can see it in places like Henrico and Mecklenburg counties in Virginia as well. And that impact, can be transformational for a community. And if there's one thing I would tell any of those communities to do, it would be begin with the end in mind. How do you want development to occur within your locality? Where do you want it? And then also the community engagement and education are critical as well.
And Martin, you also work closely with both electric companies and developers. Are there any bits of advice you might give?
Yeah, I mean, if we go back to the macro level, as I mentioned earlier, if you want to win the AI race, you need to win the power race. I think we all are struggling to get new assets integrated into the grid. It's a complex process. It takes a long time. But if you step back, you look at the US, then one cannot fail to notice that the US is just blessed with a lot of resources. I've lived the first 37 years of my life in Germany, so I know how it is if you live in a country with no resources at all. So if you look at the US, we have in the sunbelt of the US, we have ample solar. In the middle of the country, we have ample wind. And then the US has ample gas, in addition to the technologies that we have discussed earlier. So I think we as an industry should strive to say, why don't we combine the advantage of all these assets? Why don't we use low-cost renewable power that have a fuel price certainty and that have a fuel diversity from gas, for instance, and then we combine it with gas because we know we need to stabilize the grid and we need to balance the grid. So the US has it all and can deploy it at fairly competitive costs. We just need to make sure we use that approach of hybridization and integrated resources and utilities and IPPs work together to really understand what value it can drive in what parts of the grid. So I think that approach, in my mind, is one of the things that we should continue to discuss and enhance.
And I know we're right up against the clock here, but Martin, for folks who want to learn more, where should they go?
BrightNightPower.com is our webpage and a good start.
And then I know, Ed, your team does a really good job, especially on your social channels, just highlighting a lot of these infrastructure projects and just connecting them to the communities and the opportunities they're creating. So it's always great to see that as well.
Yeah. Social media, website, you name it. We're here to make sure that people understand what's happening.
Great. Well, thank you both for spending some time with us this afternoon and just really appreciate your engagement and leadership on these issues.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Ed.
That's our show for today. Thank you for listening, and be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podbean, or wherever you get your podcasts. To learn more about EEI's members and the electric power industry, visit our website at electricperspectives.com.